Reception, the timeout, 6 seconds left on the clock. They're going for a field goal. This is interesting. The kick is up, and the kick is good. The Aggies have got the field goal. 2 seconds left in the game. They are now up by 3. Oh my God, Ryan, what a field goal.
Welcome back. It's the 16th edition of the Cole Mantell Show. Live again. I guess we're not live technically. Live for myself. It's always fun when we start these, just trying to find out an intro, but I'm going to roll with it. 3 great guests again. It is championship week in the CFSL, and none other than a championship winning AD on the guest for the second week in a row. Jacob Cobb, you're joining us once again. How you doing?
Doing good, man. I'm happy to be back. That means things went well for me.
Yeah, I don't know how many times we've had people on 2 weeks in a row. I'd have to go back and check. But it's very rare for me to invite the same guy 2 weeks in a row. And I did it this week knowing I was going to try to get Kate on. Unfortunately, he had some schedule conflicts. But that would have been a lot of fun. We're going to have to talk about the championship and a lot more this week. George Yost, Miami AD, you've been on once before, sir. Welcome back to the show.
Oh, thank you very much. Glad to be here.
And we're going to stick in the state of Florida. Again, his second appearance, Adam Smith, the Florida Gators AD. Adam, your team doing a lot better than your actual real-life team you cheer for.
Yeah, that was embarrassing.
One of the guys I used to work with at the stadium, he is a big Florida Gators fan. He was actually in Austin for that game.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got a text from him, and about, I'd say the third quarter, just of, pure sadness, and I feel for the Gators fans. I really do.
Yeah, well, actually, the 2 ass whippings were pretty similar this week.
Well, yeah. No, I think Texas destroyed Florida more than Miami did.
I don't know. It was pretty close, buddy. They were
Well,
both. They were both blissful.
I guess we could just go directly into that game. So obviously, we had since our last podcast, we had the final 8, so those 4 games on Monday and Tuesday, and then the semifinals on Thursday. We'll start with these quarterfinals, and we'll start with the 2 guys that were on the show here. You lost the game, Adam. I'll ask you first. Big rivalry game, a big playoff game, and what went wrong, man?
Well, just a great game plan on George's side there. I mean, you almost know that you're game planning to stop Bo Yost, and the offense went out and was like, you know what, we're just going to throw the ball 50 times, and it's a great game plan. Caught me completely off guard. That's all. That's the in and out of it.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more, I guess, about, because Miami wins this game, ends up going to the Rose Bowl, I believe it was. Excuse me. But it definitely was a little bit of a different game plan for Miami, and luckily we have the Miami AD here we can ask, George Yost. So Florida does keep you guys under 100 yards for Bo Yost, but Lisa Pink, I'll read it out here for the viewers, 39 completions, 49 attempts, 477 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, with another 2 rushing touchdowns to add on top of that. I guess I'm curious. Yeah, so obviously pass heavy was the idea. Did you expect Lisa Pink, though, 5 combined touchdowns, including 2 rushing touchdowns in that game?
No, I didn't expect any running touchdowns from her, to be the truth, and I figured she was going to get a game where she threw about 4 touchdowns. That was what I was expecting. So she played better than what I anticipated. But yes, sir, it was a pass. We wanted to go a little bit more pass because I was thinking, rightfully so, that they were just going to load the box and force us into passing situations we didn't want to be in. So I wanted to dictate to them.
It was certainly a big win for the program. You guys make the Final Four, semifinals, whatever you want to call it. You've been to the, if we call it the Final Four, what, 2 or 3 times since you've been at Miami, George?
Yeah, let's see. I believe this was the 3rd time that I've been to the Final Four. I believe I've only been to 1 championship game and lost to. No, I think every time I've lost to Kentucky in the Final Four until this recent time.
Well, again, I'm kind of leading you into that question because Miami, obviously, they beat Florida, and actually the week before with a crazy game that we talked about last week, Miami over UNC in that 5 overtime thriller. But Miami advances, plays USC, and I'm going to ask Jacob that question kind of in a minute here. But they enter that Rose Bowl, going to USC's home turf, even though Miami was technically the home team, at least as listed in the score sheet here.
It's correct.
Yep. But 28 completions for Lisa Pink, 39 attempts, 349 passing yards. So Lisa Pink a little bit less passing yards. But I think the difference here, a few more turnovers. So talk to me about that. Did you guys try to keep the pass heavy and USC kind of adapted, or what kind of went wrong there, George?
We went with a more balanced game plan on that one. I would say pass balance. Basically, I dialed it down 10, and still a little more pass than run, but it was more pass balance. And their defense got the better of us on those turnovers. It started off 17, I believe 17-0 with us getting some turnovers, and everything was looking good, and the tide switched, and we could never get it back, and it's all their defense outplayed our offense. What it came down to, and the quarterback runs. I think our defense played very well, except for the quarterback runs, and it wasn't necessarily design runs. He'd be out there looking, nothing was open, and take off, and we'd get burnt for 15, 20-yard chunks.
I think that is a good point to bring up. Jamison Gold in that win for USC, 18 carries, 49 yards. He didn't get a touchdown on the ground in that one. For Miami, I'm sure, successful season, you would want a little bit more out of the season. You're looking to go over the top, obviously, and win your first, George. But so talk to me a little bit. I'm going to move on to Jacob here in a second. You guys switched to the Colorado playbook. You were in FIU. I know Colorado is a very well-regarded playbook. I personally like both FIU and Colorado as playbooks in general, but you guys switched to Colorado. And you are, let me see here, I have to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so 7, so it's not actually, it used to be much less teams ran the multiple. Now I think there's a few more teams that did it. In Florida, actually, a team you beat ran Virginia Tech this season, another multiple playbook. You think you're sticking, I guess it comes down to personnel, but you think you're sticking with the multiple Colorado or another multiple book next year, George?
Yeah, I want to be in, I like 2 tight ends. Of course, I got Yost, so I need to be in a book that's going to utilize him. But I also like 2 tight ends that get time. You could see that our tight end number 2 coming out of the fullback position. I believe he had a touchdown catch in the USC game and in the Florida game, and the tight end 1, Campbell, he will usually get a 18-yard plus pass at least every game over the middle, and I just believe that opens other things up for the wide receivers to do better. But I most likely be in a multiple, maybe pistol. We'll have to look at it. The whole reason I was in the FIU book was I needed a book where Pink wasn't running the speed option, because the year before the speed option absolutely killed us in turnover ratio. It's like we saw her running that, and it was like, are we about to have a fumble? Yes, we are.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get, and FIU keeps the quarterback away from that.
The other part is you say pistol is another option for your team next year. Of course,
Mhm.
usually when I talk to ADs about the pistol, it's usually one or two specific pistol playbooks. Cough, Clemson, cough. We'll see. Clemson being, I think, probably the most popular, well, easily the most popular pistol book, but maybe one of the more popular books just in general. Though I don't think anyone, no, Oklahoma had it this year. That'd be kind of fun to see Lisa Pink go through her, what would it be, the Himoteo del Este arc. We'll see. All right, well, thanks, George. We'll get back to you in a sec. I want to now move the conversation to Jacob. So we had you on last week, had a lot of fun on that show, but it's a little bit different this time because now we know you're going to your second national championship in a row. I guess we'll just start with that. How do you feel about that, Jacob?
I mean, I feel great. It feels like, the validation of a lot of hard work and recruiting, a ton of hours of game planning by me and my staff. Like, it's nice when you get to see the returns of that, and sims don't always go your way. And there are a lot of great game planners in this league. And so I feel like it's a testament to kind of what I wanted to build at USC. And I feel like we've done a pretty good job of at least beginning to establish.
Well, here's what I'll say. You talk a little bit about how sims can go either way, and I've definitely experienced that as an AD and as a player. But USC, if we're going to talk about sim luck here, might be on one of the greatest sim luck tears of all time. This playoff run, you guys, again, the seventh seed this season. Last season, you were the sixth seed. I definitely don't think people were discounting your team, but you win by 1 point. Yeah, a little bit, but you did lose to Michigan State, so there was reason for that. USC beats Texas by 1 point. You beat Georgia by 1 score, and then you beat Miami by 2. I think the one thing we can learn about your playoff runs, both last year and this year, even in the Auburn game last year when you won the championship, you guys like to play pretty much every team you play, no matter how good or bad they are overall-wise, pretty close. Would I say that's accurate, Jacob?
I mean, I can assure you I don't like it, but it keeps happening. I told George before our game that if we ended up in a triple overtime game or whatever, like he had the week before, I wouldn't be around after the game to get or send a congratulatory message because my heart can't take much more of this. Yeah, I mean, I think there's an element of like luck for sure. But this is 2 seasons in a row that all of our playoff games, for the most part, have been 1 score-ish. And in my career as an AD at USC, I think I might have maybe like 2 losses that are by more than 1 score. Like I think my mindset every week is like, how do I get obviously how do I get the best game plan? How do I get the most well-rounded game plan that takes as much of the sim out of it as I can, and then just hope that the few times I get to those coin flips at the end of the game that I get the coin flip. But I think there's a ton of luck involved in sim. I think there's a lot that goes into making sure that the luck favors you, and I feel like we do a really good job of that. We've done a really good job of that. And part of that is we change settings a lot, not always because we want to, but because we feel like there's better options out there. And so, we were going up against a winless Oregon team at the end of the season, but we didn't feel like we had our offense figured out. So we tried something new, and it didn't work the best, but we learned a lot about our book and we got the win. And we feel like all of those games have given us good data and good experience, so that when you get into these games against a George, who's a phenomenal game planner with a phenomenal team, we kind of know the ins and outs of our team really well. And we usually go into the game feeling very confident about our settings, so that, if we start with 2 turnovers on 2 drives, like we feel like we have the team and the game plan to get us back in it. And that's what has played out. It's almost killed me a couple times, but here we are.
So without looking it up, because I am looking at it right now, and I think this is maybe the craziest stat about this USC team. dating back to September 5th, week 1 of season 21, excuse me. How many games do you think, win or loss, has USC played that have been decided by more than one score, aka 7 points?
You said that's the beginning of this season.
Yep.
2.
That's less than it was. It's 4.
Oh
You
wow!
guys Yeah, so you guys beat West Virginia 44-10.
That's right.
You beat Notre Dame 41-14. And again, no offense to West Virginia or Notre Dame. Obviously, those are two teams that are, were, I would say, rebuilding this year. You beat Michigan 45-31, which I think Michigan was sneaky good this year, but still obvious. And then your biggest win against a good team this year, not your biggest win, period, but your biggest win against a good team, 33-10 against Penn State. The only reason I wanted to bring that up is that, a shocking amount of your games this season, 36-33 against Kentucky. Even when you lose against us, that was an overtime game. Michigan State 41, USC 34. And that one was decided by half-yard difference on the
fourth down play, I think.
And then you have this week again against Miami, which, by the way, the first team that USC played, you want to talk about chaos and parity in this league, the first team that number 7 seed USC played, where they were the lower seed, because they played number 10 seed Texas and then number 15 seed Georgia after they upset Ohio State. Again, 2-point game that came right down to the wire. I mean, you go to the other side of the bracket, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but A&M had a close game against Kentucky. And USC does well, though, Jacob. It doesn't really seem to faze you guys.
Yeah, man, we've been here. You go back to our because this is mostly the same team that we had last year, minus a couple of players, and close games against Bama, FSU. We get down 14-0 in the championship to Auburn and come back. We have close games in the beginning of the season. It's really become a point where, if it's halftime and we're down 17 points, there's a good number of my guys that are popping in the locker room hey, guys, we've been here. We know our defense is good enough to get turnovers, to flip the field. We know our offense has been a second-half offense all season, as annoying as that is, no matter what I do. And so, yeah, we've been there. Now, listen, there are some voice calls where my coaches are talking me off. I'm not doing well. I'm as emotional of a person as I can be when I'm watching these games. But I got some good coaches that keep me as level-headed as possible. But yeah, I mean, experience gives you confidence, I guess.
I don't believe that for a second, that Venom is one of those coaches keeping you calm. But, if it works, I'm not going to complain about it. Okay, so we talked a little bit about USC. We talked a little bit about Miami and Florida as well. I kind of want to circle back here, and we're going to let Jacob take a drink of water here, take a second to breathe. I'll start with Adam. Florida AD, you've been in the playoffs many times before, not only at Florida, but previous gigs as well. Tell me what you think about this championship. We got the USC AD in here, but Texas A&M, they're making maybe almost a Cinderella run, even though they were the number 5 seed. I don't know how many people expected them to get this far, especially after that big win against Kentucky. And you got USC here for the second year in a row. What are your thoughts on this game, Adam?
Well, I mean, I think these final two show a good indication of how well the league is transitioning into this, having more parity between teams, and the upper tier of teams, just dominating, where there's 3 or 4 teams, and that's it. Everybody else is just fighting for what's left after those 3 or 4 take their spots. So, I mean, I think it's a really positive thing to see this kind of parity. I mean, teams that no one expected to make runs even into the playoffs, getting into the playoffs, and then it seemed like, I mean, honestly, A&M. I don't think there's anybody outside of that A&M locker room that thought they were going to make it to the championship this year. So,
Well, not only
I think
go ahead.
that just goes to show how that, for one, we've got some good ADs out there now that know how to game plan and can make up talent differential with game planning. And again, there's parity among talent now. It's being utilized a little better.
So not only was Texas A&M, I don't think people thought a lot of them were going to go as far as they have, which is a credit to the AD. Texas A&M in their second round matchup, their quarterfinal matchup against Alabama, a game which I will remind the viewers, A&M won 62-33 at home. At home, were not favored against Alabama. It was an even pick if you were a sports bettor. Which, looking back on that, that's kind of crazy, obviously. But this is a team, I think part of the reason they were almost overlooked was the conference that they were played in. I think the Big 12 was regarded, rightfully or wrongly, as the weakest conference. And Adam, I think you kind of said it best. The parity here is so close together now that it's not like the old days where, I guess back in the day, it was actually just, what was it, SEC and Big 10 and like 10 teams on each conference, and then you had the MAC. So it wasn't quite the same thing, but I would agree with you that even if you quote-unquote say that the Big 12 was the weakest conference, you had Colorado with a good fight against Alabama the week before. You had Texas, obviously only 1 point off the team that would eventually be in the championship, USC, and could win a second championship in a row. So it's a really close conference just in general, and I think, well, we'll see, because I think Oklahoma is going to probably recruit well. I know Texas will, and I think A&M's still got, whether they win or lose this game, got more to give here, but Adam, I think I'd agree with you on that. I'll move it over to George. Obviously, you guys lost by 2 to USC. What's your thoughts on this game, and anything specific you want to point out too?
I think it's really a 50-50 shot on this game, much like what I kind of thought with me going into the USC game myself. I thought it was really a coin flip. I think as we watch the game unfold, is Texas A&M's defense dictating? Are they winning more than USC's offense? Then I think Texas A&M wins, and the vice versa. If you see just the opposite, USC's offense is doing well, then we're going to see them win. That's how I think that game's going to play out.
So it should be a good battle. I'm going to pull out some statistics here that I want you to answer, and then I'm going to ask Jacob directly, considering he's the AD in this game. So the leading receiver on both teams, for Texas A&M, it is Buck Stackhouse, over 1,000 receiving yards now, 13 touchdowns for the generational talent player. For USC, it's going to be Alexander Tolbert, but their leading touchdown guy, Kevin Davis, has 9. So USC's a little bit more rushing heavy, I would say. Though they're not necessarily a rushing team. Actually, all three of the ADs on the call here are on multiple playbooks. Messiah Bishop, instead, is their leading rusher with 719 rushing yards as of this week, compared to just 599 rushing yards for Felisa Snead, a name I haven't talked about too much. And actually, I should mention this as well, because if we're going to talk about rushing, and I will get to the question here in a second, George, Owen Dart, 9 rushing touchdowns and 500 rushing yards. I'd have to check, but that might be the most, and I've seen in a while for a rushing quarterback. And I guess Mateo Del Este is the guy that kind of led this category this year. So A&M, they rush with their quarterback, or they're going to throw it downfield. USC, they'll spread the ball around a little bit more, and they'll rush it definitely a lot more. This is going to be a neutral site game. Texas A&M's offense, we've talked about. USC's offense, we have the AD here to talk about it in a minute. But which offense do you think matches up better with each of these defenses, which, we haven't even talked about a lot there, but, we have some All-American candidates, some All-American guys on both defenses. So I would say pretty similar defenses. Which offense do you think matches up better?
I think, obviously game plan against USC, so I'm going to know more about that. I think USC has the edge because they can do more variety with his settings, which he's already said. They've done multiple settings. I like doing that myself. Sometimes I'll hear it from other ADs. They'll say, what the hell's going on, man? We're trying to get a game plan, and you're all over the place. So, there's the point to that. So I think USC will comes out on the edge of that. Now, I will say that both quarterbacks can take over a game with their feet. So, if you see that happen, all bets are off.
You got a dog there too?
Yes.
Well, you gotta tell us what the dog's name is now, George.
I have two. I have Lily and Avery.
All right, which one is saying hello to us?
That was Avery. Avery will bark anything that moves in the front yard, and Lily could care less.
All right, well, now that I've mentioned on the podcast, you got to put a few pictures in Discord in the league chat for us.
Will do.
All right, so Jacob, you've heard the other ADs talk about your team. I think they had some great words of wisdom for you. The only thing I'm going to say is you do have settings due in 5.5 hours, I believe. No, it's Central Time, so it'd be 6.5 hours. The only thing I will say, one thing I want to bring up that they have not. Talk to me about Sky Mills, not only as a halfback, currently fourth in the CFSL in return yards, and I believe first overall in punt return yards. I think that is going to be a difference maker. What do you think?
Yeah, man, she got voted offensive captain for a reason. She's been the only girl on our team all 3 seasons, and she's kind of just like been adopted as this is everything that USC represents. She always has a great attitude. We call her the Vulture because we'll do a bunch of work. Bishop will crank out 20 brutal yards to get us down to the 1-yard line, and she comes in and just goes untouched for a touchdown. But she makes a difference every time she touches the ball. She typically has great reception. She does well just out of the backfield, and then especially in these playoffs, man, she's been setting us up in such good field position, which for an offense like ours that at times this season has struggled, like, man, it makes it so much easier when you're starting your drive on the 40 or the 45. And, as an AD, you start to think to yourself, like, okay, like 3 points is better than no points. Like, we don't have to go very far to get into field goal range. And then, there's a little bit of a safety net there. So, she makes our offense go in multiple ways.
Well, she was a noticeable presence in our game, and I would say in a few playoff games as well. I think this stat is kind of crazy, and I just pulled it up, but I want to mention it before we move on. If you go by the USC offensive stats page, and you rank each player on the team on offense that scores touchdowns, Gold has the most with 23 passing touchdowns. Kevin Davis has 9 receiving touchdowns. In third place is a 3-way tie between your wide receiver 2, I don't know how you define it on your team, but wide receiver 2, Alexander Tolbert with 6, your halfback 1 with 6, Messiah Bishop, and then arguably your halfback 2 returner with 6 touchdowns. It's been a while since I've seen that in a stat page, to be honest with you, Jacob.
Yeah,
That's what you mean.
Yeah, we it feels weird to say that when you playbook test, you playbook test to for a book that's really gonna utilize your halfback 2 really well. But it's something that we definitely we're going through and we're ranking playbooks. What do we like? What do we not like? And the ones that we really like this season, one of the big differences was, hey, Sky gets, even if it's 6 to 8 carries a game, 2 to 3 catches, and then is also returning the ball. Like, that's a ton of chances for someone that's super explosive to make a really big difference. And both books that we've used this season have been good for that, and she has come up big in every single moment, it feels like.
I think the other crazy part, if we're going to play this game, 43 carries, 6 touchdowns. That's going to be one of the crazier ratios of anyone in
the
this
Vulture,
league
man.
period. Well, except for Seiji Matsumura, which obviously I believe Matsumura is a tight end. Am I correct on that? Yeah,
he's our tight end too.
Yeah, 2 rushing touchdowns on 2 carries, which I assume is the fullback, which is always fun to see that. But in terms of pure halfbacks, I think that's maybe one of the highest ratios in the league.
Yeah, man, she's the best. She was a big part of just us building this team and really, a real team first player. Doesn't get down if there's a sim that goes and she doesn't get touches or whatever, and then the next week she'll get 2 rushing touchdowns or whatever, and it's the whole locker room just loves it. She is honestly, this season has been just one of those things that we rally behind. Get Sky more touches, and then it's always You'll see Bishop and Tolbert going back and forth about who has more catches in USC history. Um, and so there's some fun dynamics like that. And one of those is if you notice we get inside the three, Venom is usually the one that'll be like, all right, feed Bishop. The rest of us are like, bring in Sky.
So you bring that up. I will, before we move on, I kind of want to bring that up as well. Receptions, USC career history, Messiah Bishop, 182. Alexander Tolbert, 176. Who do you think ends the season on top?
I wanna. My heart wants to say Tolbert because he's such a weapon, man. He's so explosive. He makes unbelievable catches, and for some reason, Jamison Gold just will not throw him the ball sometimes. Um, we've moved him around. We've tried different settings, and so randomly it'll be like he has 12 catches for 180 yards and 2 touchdowns, and you're like, yeah, we should do this every week. And the next week he's 1 catch for 7 yards, and the on-screen graphics are roasting him in the third quarter.
As someone who played wide receiver and had that happen like multiple times when I was on Miami, I understand that struggle. Yeah, 0 yards in the first half. Thanks, Mr.
Yeah,
Graphic Guy.
but
Um, yeah.
it's things like that have made being the AD at USC really special, and I think have given us a really good culture. Up for team spirit every year. We've had two Fan of the Year nominations, and part of it is just the stuff like that, like people not taking it too seriously and being able to joke about our halfback getting a bunch of catches or our backup halfback stealing touchdowns, and it's that like energy and it's that like level of fun that makes my job really easy. Even after losses, they're picking me up like, hey, we'll bounce back next week or whatever, and I really feel like that team spirit is part of why we've gotten here 2 years in a row.
So yeah, good luck to Bishop and Tolbert, both playing in their final career game, no matter what happens on Monday.
I'll give you a little
You have
tidbit. If you see Alan in Twitch chat type ATB, that means anyone but Tolbert, or ABT, anyone but Tolbert.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be nice to one of my former players. We'll see. He's a fun guy. I guess what we've had technically four now ADs at Auburn, um, and he's one of them. So
Yeah.
I wish him well. I wonder where he's going next year. Probably not to the AD circle. That's all I'll say. Okay. So we've talked about this game a little bit. I don't think anyone else has anything that they want to add specifically on like any of the playoff games or anything like that. I think we've kind of covered it pretty well. I guess I'll have one more question, just because this is going to come out maybe about an hour or two before Cade has to submit his settings as Texas A&M AD. Besides Buck Stackhouse, we've talked about him a little bit. Jacob, one player on that Texas A&M team that you fear the most, and it cannot be Buck Stackhouse. Who you choosing?
It won't be. It'll be the quarterback, and you guys already hit on why. You don't get a ton of time to test in between the we get more this season in between that Final Four game and the championship. But man, one of the deciding things that I'm noticing in our sims is if Owen Dart runs the ball well and passes efficiently, this offense is almost impossible to stop. That just that ability to keep and run for 7-8 yards on a design quarterback run, or even on a scramble like Gold does a lot, and just keep you ahead of the chains when normally a tackle for loss would put your defense in a great position. Like I think that will be one of the things that decides how this Texas A&M offense rolls.
Alrighty. Well, yeah, speaking of which, we've previewed the national championship. Usually we pick the games each week on this show. I am not going to do that with one of the guys in this call being in the national championship, another guy losing to that team, and the other guy losing to that team that lost to that team. I feel like it's a little bit obvious where I think they're going to choose. But we're going to move on here. I want to bring up some All-American stuff. We didn't get to it last week. I'll bring it up here. And it kind of relates as well. Obviously, Buck Stackhouse, one of those All-Americans at wide receiver. A&M also had Rand Rockwell on the defensive line as an All-American. And USC had Payson Parker. Is it just that one? Yeah, because Venom did not get it. And none of your wide receivers probably would have gotten it. So I guess, you have Payson Parker, Jacob, and we talked about him a little bit last week, if I remember correctly. I'm going to assume leads your team in tackles still. I'd have to check that real quick. Yes, he does. 89 tackles, 10 TFLs, and he is also, I believe, a senior. Am I not mistaken?
Yeah, sorry, I thought I was muted. We also have Derek Davis. Edited him in later because they mistyped it. And
Okay.
he's up for Defensive Player of the Year as well.
That's I was like looking at that and I was like, there's no way. Oh, I see it now. There's no way that he is not
Yep.
up there for it. Um, I mean, I've kind of already asked you what your opinions of your team are. I'm not gonna, make you extol the virtues of these players again. But I want you to name one player, and it can be on your team. It doesn't have to be on this All-American list, which is in the announcements for all. Because I'm gonna ask this question all three of our AD guests on the show here. One player, Jacob, that was not named All-American that you think kind of got not robbed, but just didn't get chosen. Who you think that would be?
Man. I mean, listen, it would be hard for me to not mention the guys in my secondary. I mean, we have, I would say, like one of the best defenses in the league, and it's largely in part because of the stacked secondary that we have. But if we're going away from my team, man, that Florida quarterback did some unbelievable things this year.
Yeah,
Um,
I was gonna see. Now you're stealing my answer, but go ahead.
no, yeah, I mean, we've talked about it before. Maybe the expectations for Florida coming into this season, and then how well they performed, and what a formidable offense they had, highlighted by that quarterback. And Florida and Jack Schmidt like ran that Virginia Tech playbook to perfection.
Well, we can ask the guy who ran it. He's
Absolutely.
on the show. Adam, how do you feel about that?
I appreciate it. I mean, I don't know. There was some good quarterback play out there. I mean, of course, I'm biased. I think with what we had, I mean, we put together amazing offensive displays throughout the season. And I mean, the teams that have simmed against us, George knows this. When you look at the overall offense, defense, and overall before you run that sim, there were some major gaps between our team and the other, and I think the adversity that he showed this season, and I mean taking the team to the second round of the playoffs. He had some great weapons around him. And as far as that Virginia Tech book goes, that's Ike's favorite book. I've game planned against that book many a times. That's one of those books where you game plan against it enough, you know how to run that book.
Mm.
So, but I mean, I personally for our team, I would have loved to have seen Ricky Lewis get a nod because that guy on third down, that guy was more clutch than anybody on our team. If it was 3rd and 8, he's running that tight end smash. I mean, he was Mister Come Up Big and top 5 in most of the tight end stats. So, um, but Tyree had a great season. That quarterback was amazing. So I mean, well deserved for him to win it. Um, I don't know, as far as the snub, I'd have to go uh, on the defensive side. There were some really good guys in the secondary this season, and I think there's quite a few of those guys that could have been in, but then somebody else that deserved it wouldn't be.
It was competitive. I'll read them out for the listeners. At cornerback, All-American Chewy Baca, Teddy Legend of Kentucky, Roman Ware of Alabama at cornerback, and then at safety, Ra Banks for Colorado, Payson Parker at USC, and Ziggy Zelensky, one heck of a name for Virginia Tech. Um, I mean, I just pull it up. There's a few names on here you could pull up and talk about. There was Justin James, actually, for Florida. Would be one of those names that I would say, Adam, that could have been a
Yeah.
snub for you guys. And Colin Perry for Alabama is the other one that I would bring up at safety. Um, but all right, sounds good. And I'm going to ask the question again to George here. I have my own name, but I'm going to let you say first. It can be on your team. It does not have to be your team. One player that could have been an All-American but you think would be maybe a snub. And you are muted, by the way.
I don't know if I go snub because he didn't get on the list, and which is kind of why you would say snub. But I just think a little strong. But I'll go with one of my guys who has, I guess you could say I'd be biased, but I think a lot of people really liked the catch he made in overtime with North Carolina. And that's Zay Witherspoon. That was the most amazing catch that I've seen since I've been in the CFSL. And he was our most dominant receiver. He had the most pancakes. Not the fastest wide receiver, but he just produced, man. And he's a senior, and I'm really going to miss him. Mike Weaver there on the defensive line, I think was the only person on the defensive line that actually stopped Venom's quarterback there from running loose.
He's a monster.
Those two guys, but we're gonna miss Zay, but that's all about the process of replacing and talent as it leaves.
So, yeah, I like those answers as well. The only one that I'm going to add, and I've been talking about him a lot in the SEC articles, so that's kind of where I figured this guy out, and I've watched some of the
This
Georgia
might be
games.
my other one.
Is it Jad McPherson?
Oh, it's not.
Who are you thinking?
So he came to my mind as soon as I finished, and I remember us having a conversation about it, wondering who we were going to have to game plan for. Dude, Ricky Rack at Kentucky,
Oh yeah.
65
Yeah.
catches, 1,000 yards, 15 touchdowns, only one drop, and here's the kicker: 116 pancake blocks.
So I definitely have mentioned him as well on this show. I was going more defensive with Jack
Gotcha.
Peterson, but both of them are correct answers. Obviously, I think All-Americans were voted on at the beginning of the playoffs, and I know he's had a few big games in the playoffs. I mean, we can just pull up his stats real quick, actually. Let me pull it up real quick. Ricky Rack, yeah, 116 pancake blocks is insane.
Yeah, he's an animal.
So since not being since All-American voting was started, 4 catches, 83 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns, murders Michigan State. Sorry, Drake. Then against Auburn, 8 receptions, 171 yards, 3 touchdowns in these playoffs. And I think maybe Texas A&M shutting them down, that might have been part of their win. Only 2 catches and 26 yards against the Aggies. That might be kind of something to look at as well as a snub a little bit. Great season for him. He's going to be a junior for Kentucky, and I would imagine maybe an All-American next year possibly. But all right. Anyone else have any other nominations before we move on? Just for fun, I'm going to pull this up. The top 5 players in the CFSL this season in pancake blocks. Ricky Rack with 116. Lincoln Martin for Ohio State with 101. Zay Witherspoon, we're talking about him a minute ago, 99. Oh, he's just one short of 100. I'm so sorry, George. Laramie Larson, a name I have not even talked about, I think, on the show all season, with 94 for Oklahoma. And then Malachi Cobb, another wide receiver for Kentucky, with 84. And, by the way, number 6, Lamandon Lloyd for Kentucky. So 3 of the top 6 guys in pancake blocks this season for Kentucky. That's an interesting stat I'd put out into the chat here.
Yeah, them Kentucky receivers, they all block. But they've been like that since season 16, 17. I mean, Davis has always had a team that's stacked with receivers that know how to block.
No personality, no diva problems in that wide receiver room. Them boys block.
Yep.
No, it was usually just the quarterback that was a diva. I'm not even referencing the current quarterback they had either. I'm talking about the quarterback they had before.
Mm.
And I love him to death, but it was a heck of a lot of fun to watch as an outside neutral. Not as fun to play against at Auburn, I'll be honest with you. It's not a fun experience. All right. So we've gone over most of this already in the 45 minutes we've been on the air. I guess I'll kind of bring it back around. I'm going to ask, this question is both for George and Adam, and I wish I had Tom to ask this question real quick, but I guess we'll have him answer it once the show goes live. Before we move on here to the final part of this show, the Florida rivalry. We talked about it before the show. We need Florida and Miami to play more than just in the playoffs. They got to play non-conference. Florida, Florida State, Miami must play each other every season. I think you guys both agree.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's just something, and I think all three of these teams are going to be relative in the league, and we're Florida's on the rise. Miami has a great program. Grin always has a great program. So I mean, these are going to be big time games for out of conference.
So
Yeah, I don't
go
really
ahead,
need that.
George.
Yeah, I don't really think I need to add anything. I think it's a no-brainer. Have all three Florida teams play each other. I think we'd all enjoy. I know I enjoyed it because this was the first time I got the game plan against Adam. So I always enjoy that. And my whole time in the league experience playing Florida was when I was at Alabama. So I would like to get them on a regular rotation.
Oh, yeah. The only thing I'll say on this, and maybe, this is a public plea for Mike to schedule these teams every year, and I know it's tough to make the schedule and all that, but Miami, Miami, Florida was a lot of fun this year. I will say Florida and Florida State, that rivalry right now, and I guess I'll ask Adam this question because you are a part of this rivalry. At least from a neutral viewing perspective, I don't think there's any rivalry in the CFSL right now that's been both as competitive and as feisty as this rivalry was this season. You beat Grin and deny him his 100th win as an AD over his rival, and then you go and beat him in the playoffs after they choose you as the third choice.
Yeah, I
There's
mean
a little bit of hate there.
that you hate it because you don't want, like, I wanted Grin to get that 100th win. I just didn't want to be the guy he got it against. You know what I mean? Like, nobody
you can
wants
be
to
honest.
be that guy.
It's like you can be honest. I don't think you wanted him to get it at all. At least not when he played you. Like,
Yeah, no, I didn't
I don't
want
know.
him to get it against me. I mean, he gets it the following week. That's fantastic. I'll send him a big congratulations. Me and Tom, we've had quite a few battles. Uh, back at Oklahoma State and things like that. We have a lot of respect for each other, and I look forward to those games. And I know it eats his crawl that I'm up two on him.
Well, I'll tell you this. I mean, he talked to me at Hangout, and he was very much unhappy that he lost one. I can't imagine what he's like now. He's lost two, and he's gonna probably talk about it when we get back when this releases tonight, and we talk a little bit in the comments with it in Discord. Miami is not just a neutral third party either. The big win in the playoffs this year, and Miami Florida State was a great game as well in the regular season. But we'll see. We'll see what the scheduling committee can offer us. And just before we move on from that, another shout out to the fact. I know this was unintentional, but shout out to the ADs that decided to put Miami, Florida, and Florida State. I guess technically it wasn't all unintentional because obviously Grin chose Florida, but put 3 of the 4 teams on that bracket in that area with UNC just from the state of Florida. Beautiful.
Yeah, to all
scheduling.
inevitably have to play each other.
Yeah, beautiful. We had a 6 overtime. Was it 5 overtime? I think it's 5 overtime game.
Yeah.
And then we had Florida over Florida State again. We just talked about it, and then Miami, Florida. We had on Tuesday, I believe it was. Yeah, Tuesday. And those are all great teams. USC. They definitely. I wouldn't call it an easier path considering what Georgia did to Ohio State, but it was. USC Texas is a fun game. I'm not trying to joke on you, Jacob, but do you think USC is here if they're putting UNC's spot at the 11 seed instead of 7? I guess I'll ask that directly, Jacob.
Yeah, I mean, and I try to be a humble guy, but I'll just say this. In my first year as AD in the playoffs, I beat undefeated Illinois and then 6-2 Penn State and ended up losing to Florida in the Final Four. And then run last season, run this season. Like, I think that my staff and my team, I think that we can go toe to toe with anyone. I mean, we hear this said all the time in the NFL and college football. Like, you can only beat who's in front of you. Um, and if we'd had to play Ohio State, that was a one-score game earlier this season, and we feel like we had grown as a team. So we'll give our best shot against whoever they put in front of us, and we feel like as long as we know we put the work in, we have a pretty good shot to do that.
Yeah, I mean that's always the professional way to go about it. You don't want to rile anyone up, but um, yeah, I will agree with you. Of all 16 teams, yeah, Oklahoma included. I think it was tough no matter what spot you got, and I say that from experience as being the 9 seed and getting my ass kicked by Kentucky. Um,
That was a tough draw.
well, not only that, Kentucky, they go and they beat Auburn the next week, and we haven't talked about them a whole bunch because we don't have Devin on the show. But that A&M Kentucky game again, 3-point game in the Gator Bowl. A&M moves on obviously from that, and Kentucky again, despite being the 8 seed, is kind of like USC. They're always in the Final Four. They're always usually, one of the biggest contenders around.
Yeah, I mean Davis is unbelievable. That the offense that he's built is unbelievable. I think a lot of what we're talking about just goes back to what was said a little while ago about the parity in the league. Like, there's a lot of us, I'll put myself in this group, like younger ADs that really wanted to be good at this and have asked the guys that know what they're doing questions and have recruited people to help us know how to do it better. And so I think the floor is rising for what it takes to be an AD in this league. And
Especially a
maybe just,
playoff AD.
the expectation game planning, that we all feel like any of us can put together a good game plan on any given week.
Yeah, no, what I was saying was especially a playoff AD as well. To make
Oh yeah, I
playoffs in
mean,
this league is so much. I mean, like obviously, I'm one to talk as someone who made one playoff in 4 seasons at Auburn, but um, yeah, like especially recently, it has been so difficult to make the playoffs, and it's fun to watch.
I mean, we had that
Um,
conversation last week about who are the best game planners in the league, and I mean, Davis has got to be 1A in the league. I mean, we can have a conversation about who's best at what time, but I don't ever want to see him.
yeah, right now I mean, you're up there for sure. I guess it's second straight championship. We have to include your name as maybe number 1. George could be on that list. I mean, Adam, you could be on this list technically too of what you've done with Florida this year.
Yeah,
But
well, and I mean, I did go to 3 straight national championships, so there's that.
okay, but I would argue what you're doing. That's actually a good point.
Nice.
But I would argue, Adam, what you're doing now with Florida, with the talent you have at Florida, is arguably more impressive from a game planning standpoint than what you did with Oklahoma State.
Oh, absolutely. That's why well, number one reason is I'm a Gator in real life, so I was going to jump at that opportunity regardless. But to take a roster that had 4 people on it and build it up and then be a second round playoff team by your second season, I mean, I trying to get it out of that stigma because people are like, oh, he was handed the keys to the kingdom and this and that. I was at Oklahoma State for a long time. I helped build that team with Houston. Me and Houston put in a lot of work on that team. Um, so, I mean, I put in my work at
Yeah, no,
Oklahoma
I
State. I
mean,
was just, this was my chance to get away from that. There's no shadow that I'm coming under. I wasn't handed anything. I wasn't handed a broom to sweep the floor with at Florida.
Handed
So
the keys to a broken moped.
yeah, exactly. So I mean, this is my chance to reaffirm that, I guess.
but yeah, I guess my overarching point was, and you do get credit obviously if you recruit that well too. I don't want to throw any shade on Oklahoma State, but um, for reference, just to make fun of myself again here, in my 5 seasons as an AD, 1 at Washington, 4 at Auburn, I made the second round of the playoffs once in a year where every team made the playoffs. In 2 seasons at Florida, Adams already matched that. So just goes to show you how good of an AD he is.
I
Um,
appreciate that.
anyhow, if we talk about this Final Four here, um, Miami could be on that list. I mean, we haven't talked a whole bunch because he didn't make the show tonight, but Cade as well at A&M. What is this, their second season under him, and they're already, in the national championship on a great run through the playoffs. And it's one of those things, Jacob said, the parity is there in this league, and it's a lot of fun to watch. So that's all my saying on it. I do have one more question for you guys before we get off this show, and it's going to concern the league as in general. We got 24 teams. I don't know if we're adding or losing any. We'll find that out tomorrow, actually. Of these teams, and this is kind of going beyond the season, so we're going to have the big championship tomorrow on Veterans Day. Which team in the offseason do you guys think, and you cannot choose your own for the answer to this question. I'll ask George first because he hasn't talked in a little bit. Which team do you think is going to be the most interesting to watch, or if you're on the show, the most interesting thing to talk about in the Cole Mantell show? We'll put it that way. George, you're first. Go ahead.
Most interesting to talk about next season. I got three that's popping to my head. Michigan State, Kentucky, North Carolina. Kentucky, North Carolina, I believe Kentucky has one senior.
Yeah.
North Carolina has three seniors. And Drake's made a good turnaround from last season to this season. So if he keeps that momentum up, I'm very interested to see what the progress is next season.
For the record, we also only, I believe, have three seniors at Michigan State.
There you go.
So definitely for next season. I don't know how many fireworks they'll have in off-season recruiting because of that, but certainly all three teams have been good and can be good next season. Jake, I'm going to ask you the same question. Which team besides your own would be the most interesting to talk about this offseason?
Yeah, I think, there's always a couple that stick out. I think my two are, I'm curious to see what DT and Carr can do on the defense with Oklahoma. If that recruiting cycle goes well, that could be a team that takes their Achilles heel, turns it into a real weapon, and then that offense is already, amazing. And then my other one, and, I just played them, but Georgia. I know full and well what happens when you have a little bit of a Cinderella run in the playoffs, and then you use that to recruit and bring in the guys to take your team to the next level. And I think if they recruit well, that Georgia team could come back with a vengeance next season and maybe bring some of that playoff magic to the regular season.
That Georgia team is ridiculous. I said it last week, the idea that you are just some average team, and I don't mean to disparage them, but some average team in the regular season, and then you just go out and decide to wreck the seasons. They've done it like 2 or 3 times in the last few seasons.
No, I know.
And they almost did it to you. I mean, it was a good game. Obviously, you guys come out on top, but like Georgia, I would agree with you. And Oklahoma, you stole. That was going to be my answer. Originally, it was Oklahoma. But I think I have a better team. I'll wait for Adam to respond here. Same question for you, Adam. One team next season that's going to be the most fun to talk about this offseason. We'll put it that way.
I had two pop into my head, and one of them we've already talked about in Oklahoma. I'm very interested to see what they can do on the defensive side of the ball, because that team can be very scary good. And my other one is I'm very interested to see what Michigan does in this offseason. And I think that's going to be a lot of talking points. I mean, what is Ike got to bring in to balance things out and to make things click? Because it just seemed like they could not get anything clicking this season.
Yeah, Michigan goes 1-7. I believe their only win was over winless Oregon. That's a great answer. I think we haven't really talked about. And I'm just looking at the roster right now for Michigan. They have a few seniors on the team. They're going to probably bring back Wyndham Carter, barring a transfer or something like that. You got a lot of depth on that team. It was very surprising to see where they are, and it's a very competitive Big Ten. So I like that answer a lot. I can't choose Michigan State for my team, and I'm not going to choose one of the 3 guys on here, though I will say Miami this offseason, George, you got an interesting challenge ahead of you. You said you got Zay moving on, but that defense, I want to know how you rebuild that. I think that'd be a fun story to talk about. And then there's USC, obviously, as well, with what's going on the last few seasons. My pick, besides Oklahoma, which I think we've talked a lot about, I want to see Colorado. I want to see what they do.
Yeah.
Because Sky Sanders will be a senior. You lose Bruno Bones. He's their graduating senior. You lose both your tight ends, but you got Bill Buddy on that team. And then I think they lose a cornerback and something else. But in a Big 12 that was very topsy-turvy this year and I think is going to be very competitive next year, I want to see what they do with Taylor James as a junior, Sky Sanders as a senior, and a proof of concept in Boulder. That'd be my team I really want to talk about. Plus, their AD is a heck of a character, if I should say so myself.
That's a good one. That is a good one. I mean, are they going to be able to take it to that next level?
Yeah. I mean, there's a few teams you could say about that, especially in the Big 12. And Texas A&M proved you can do it.
Yeah.
You can win the.
Absolutely.
They didn't win the Big 12, but they, the number 5 seed, and they go through, and we'll see.
They're in the big dance.
I'll add to something Adam said. If Venom posted in League Chat the other day, if you flip the one-score games of the league, which doesn't always equal 1-1, like close games or good game plans, but if you flip one-score games, Michigan went 5-3 this season.
Yeah.
And you don't ever want to do the moral victory thing, as we've poked fun at, but man, you got to look at that and be like, man, we were 6-7 plays away from a way different season.
Yeah, right there.
Well, you don't want to do it for USC. If you flip that answer, I think you guys are like under 500. If you flip one-score games.
No, we would because all of our games were one-score games. We would still be 6-2 and 4-1.
Yeah.
If you flip the result, yeah, I guess. Yeah, I don't have time to go through that.
I'm looking at what he posted, so I guess we're taking Venom's word for it. But
that's fair. I don't know why Adam groaned. He was the AD of Florida for like 7 seasons. Was pretty good at it.
Yeah, but I mean, nobody knows if Venom's fact checking his stuff or not.
All right, we'll leave it at that.
He likes to shoot
guess.
from the hip.
No, I get it. He's been on this show before. All right. Well, it's going to be a great national championship tomorrow. I think everybody's excited. As always, before I shut off the stream here and we head over to Monday, I give each of my guests 30 seconds to talk about their school. Jacob, you're in the national championship. You got 30 seconds. Talk about your school and what this championship is going to mean to you.
Yeah, man. I mean, we feel like we have a good game plan. We're going to submit it, put it in the hands of the sim gods, and just try to have a blast tomorrow in our locker room and have a good time. And, hopefully join that kind of elusive back-to-back club. I feel like that would be a lot of fun. So
that'd be a historic kind of, I hate to use that word, but that would be historic for USC, obviously. After your national championship, the team leaves for a little bit, comes back. To be in the same grouping as Kentucky and Oklahoma State recently, Notre Dame is also on that list. You got history in front of you on Monday. Adam, you got 30 seconds. I know you've won a few championships in your time in this league too. Go ahead, talk about your Florida Gators.
No, I'm just so proud of this team. I mean, from where we started, not just last season, but from this season, and the guys that have bought in and that are on board. I mean, they're not going anywhere. I've got a great core group to build around, and that's what we're going to do this off season. I just wanted to, say that I'm super proud of what that team has accomplished this season. Exceeded my expectations.
Yeah, I think they exceeded pretty much everybody's expectations.
Yeah.
Great season for you guys. We'll see how you build on it next season. And finally, last but not least, George, you got 30 seconds. 1 win away, 2 points away from the national championship. You guys will be back, I'm sure. Talk about your team.
Yeah, I'm very happy with the season that we had. The season before, I was running 2 teams, and I just wasn't able to give enough time to Miami, which they deserved to have. And the 4 seniors that we have, absolutely love those guys. Great locker room, great on game day. Going to really miss those, but it's like I said before, it's all part about the replacing the talent process. Recruiting can be as much fun as you make out of it, and we try to take a good attitude and have fun with it.
Alrighty. Well, I'd like to thank all three of my guests. I'd also like to wish everybody listening. I maybe should have done this at the top. Happy Veterans Day tomorrow. I have two grandparents that actually served in the Army and Navy respectively, so
Yeah,
always
absolutely.
want to honor the veterans as well. There's not really an easy way to put that in the show. I guess I could have led with that, but it's it's a esports commentary show. I'm not sure how I would have been able to fit that in otherwise, but happy Veterans Day, and God bless this country. I really do want to make sure that when we celebrate this championship tomorrow, we'll honor veterans as well. I'm sure Mike will have some nice pageantry for that. I'd like to thank as well my three guests on that note. I'd like to thank the USC AD, Jacob Cobb, the Miami Athletic Director, George Yost, and the Florida AD, Adam Smith, for jumping on the Cole Mantell Show. This has been the 16th edition of the show. We will be back next week, not only to recap the national championship, but look ahead to this offseason. It has been a great honor to have all three of you on here. And that conclusion script went a little bit better than my opening script. What do you guys think?
Liked it.
Better?
Sounded good.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys next week, and tune in tomorrow. Pre-game show, the national championship preview, and then we got Monday, 11/11 at 7 o'clock Central Time. Texas A&M, USC. Who's going to be the season 21 national champion? Tune in to find out. Have a great night, guys.
Go Gators.
Good night.